All right guys, it's July and it's time to do my top 3 baits for the month of July. Now before I get into it, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on. Obviously, July is very hot. We're starting to get into the dog days of summer. We've gotten past the spawn. We don't have to worry about patterning those fish quite as much. We're just going out there and fishing. The fish really have 2 things on their mind when we get into the summertime, and that is to eat and to stay comfortable. Now, as the water temperatures rise and we're starting to get to where the temperatures are starting to max out, those fish are going to be looking for areas where they can stay cool and they can find oxygenated water. Oxygenated water is going to be anywhere where there's current, whether that's wind-blown current or current created by a river system, and then also anywhere with vegetation. So grass is always a big producer of oxygen, so anytime in the summer, if you find grass, that's always a good place to start looking for fish. I like to kind of run around and I'm looking for activity this time of year. There's going to be a lot of dead areas, so if I can find an area that's still got brim in it, if I see some activity, maybe some shad flickering, that's an area that I know that has abundant oxygen and it's got some life, and I'm looking for areas with life before I even start fishing this time of year. So with that being said, let's get into the baits. We're going to start out with a Texas rig. Now, I'm going to throw a very lightweight Texas rig this time of year, and my go-to is going to be this June bug. It's just a Zoom trick worm. I like a straight tail worm this time of year. Not a lot of action. These fish are getting kind of lethargic, and they don't necessarily want something moving around a lot in their face. They're not moving much. The bait isn't moving a whole lot. Everything's just kind of conserving energy, conserving oxygen. So I'm going to go with the lightest weight that I can get away with and still be able to maintain contact with the bottom. And one of the things that light weight is going to do for me is it's going to force me to slow down. This time of year you want to slow down a little bit, keep that bait in the strike zone longer. Don't make those fish work too hard and burn up too much oxygen. So I'm going to use either like a 1/8 ounce or a 3/16 ounce weight. It's going to depend on my current. It's going to depend on the water depth. The deeper the water, you'll have to go a little bit heavier. But this will cause you to slow down by throwing a lighter weight. It's also going to cause you to pay more attention to being able to feel that bait. A heavy bait is easy to feel. I can feel contact with the bottom, and you might miss some of those light bites that you get in the summer. A lighter weight's really going to make you pay attention to every little subtlety of that, and you'll feel it when they just kind of, a lot of times in the summer, they'll just pick it up and hold it, and you'll be able to feel that you've lost contact with the bottom and know that something has your bait. Now that being said, the way I've got this one rigged is, like I said, a 1/8 ounce tungsten weight, and I do like to peg my weights. I've got a 3/0 owner wide gap hook, not an extra wide gap, just a regular wide gap hook. I'm not a big fan of the EWG hooks. And then I'm going to throw that on either 15 or 17 pound fluorocarbon. I use Seaguard. This is the Invisex. And you're going to want to do the lightest line that you can get away with in the situation you are. Obviously, if you're fishing around cover or heavy grass, you're going to want to go with a heavier line. The lighter the line, the more natural that bait's going to fall, and the more you're going to be able to feel that bait with a light weight. Now I've got that paired up with a TFO option series rod. This is a 7.3 medium heavy, and that's going to be a good all-around rod for your Texas rigs. So that's the Texas rig. Let's move on to our next one. All right, our next bait is going to be the hollow body frog. And when I'm fishing a hollow body frog this time of year, I'm looking for 2 things. I'm looking for shade or heavy grass where it's starting to mat out already. And the reason I like the hollow body frog versus, say, a cast and wind ribbit frog or a flapping frog by Spro is, as I said with the Texas rig earlier, this time of year, I'm looking to slow down a little bit. And I can keep this bait in the strike zone longer. And also, I can take this frog and skip it up under overhanging limbs where a lot of those bass are going to hang out in the summer. And that's kind of my goal a lot of times with this frog, is to skip it under those trees, and a lot of times they'll hit it just as soon as it stops moving. If they're sitting under there looking for some bait, they'll hit it as soon as you skip it under there. You're going to want to skip it into the smallest little holes, nooks and crannies. Anywhere there's shade this time of year is where those fish are going to be hanging out. And I want to throw this thing as far back in there as I can, get it past where everybody else is throwing stuff, and get in there where those fish are hanging out. This particular frog is a live target frog. I do like throwing the live targets. They're a little bit smaller profile, and I like a very soft frog. Spro frogs are quite stiff. A lot of times you have to boil them. These are great right out of the package. I also like the booyah frogs a little bit. And the new launch frog by Snag Proof is a nice soft frog, a good walking frog. And I'm going to walk that bait really slow, more of a kind of a walk, 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 walk the dog. I'm not looking to move it real fast. I'm just trying to get it under there and make those fish react to it. Now I'm going to be throwing that also on a medium heavy rod. What that's going to allow me to do is it's got a little more tip than a heavy action, and you'll be able to walk it a little bit easier. And also when you get ready to skip it under places, you can load up that rod and skip it under those limbs a lot better than you can with a heavy action rod. And it's still got plenty of backbone to pull those fish out from under those trees. And with a soft body frog, you don't have to have a heavy action rod to drive those hooks home. These hooks will drive home just fine with a medium heavy. I do have this paired up on 50-pound Seaguar Tactex braid with a high-speed reel. So moving on, let's get into our final bait for the month of July. All right, so final bait is the Fluke. Now, the Fluke is going to be a very versatile bait this time of year. You can fish open water with it. You can fish for schooling bass with it, up high, real fast, twitching it in the water column. And you can also skip it in a lot of those places that you're throwing the frog and let it sink just a little bit and work it out in a really slow jerk, pause action and get it down deep. Now this is the Zoom Super Fluke. If I'm going to fish somewhere where the water's shallow or I want to keep it on top, I'm going to throw this Zoom. If I want to get it a little bit deeper, I'm going to throw the Yamamoto. It's got a lot more salt in it. It sinks a lot like the Senko, and if I want to get that bait down a couple of feet and work it slow over the top of like some submergent grass or something like that, I'm going to go with that Yamamoto. There's really only two colors that I throw in a Fluke, and that's going to be either a white or a green pumpkin, depending on whether they're keyed in on shad or they're keyed in on brim. And with a Fluke, I like a medium rod. Now I'm going to throw it with braided line, so I've got 30-pound braid with like a 3 to 4 foot fluorocarbon leader, either in 15-pound or 17-pound, depending on your cover and your situation. Now one little trick that I have throwing a Fluke, and this is something that I started doing here recently, is as you can see, I've actually snelled my hook. And what that's allowed me to do is I don't have that tag end poking out that's going to catch on little pieces of grass and all the junk. So as you can see, that line comes straight out of there. There's no tag end hanging out. So far, I really like that setup. So give that a try and let me know what you think about it. But anyway, that is our baits for July. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your top baits are for July. I'm sure I left something out that you're like, whoa, that's one of my favorite baits for the month of July. And obviously, there's no way to cover all of the baits that you could use for any given month. I just went through the 3 baits that I like the most, that I'm going to throw, that I'm going to pick up, the first ones that I'll go to in the month of July. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch you guys later.